Hello. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about lab testing. Now, firstly, I work in a number of different ways with families. So I'm going to my main program, which is called the ADHD Thrive method for kids, which really focuses on fighting symptoms with food first. Some do functional lab testing with me and some do both. Now, I don't recommend functional lab testing to everyone. It is expensive and it is not covered by insurance, which is a story for another day. It makes me very upset because I know that I could help so many more families. But there are only 3 times I'd recommend it. Firstly, the family's tried a low inflammatory diet. They've had some good results, but they know there's something deeper going on that we need to investigate. Number 2 is there's a red flag in the health history. So a red flag would be something like lots of ear infections or strep when the child was younger, some gut issues, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, smelly gas, that sort of thing, or a history of seasonal allergies, asthma, eczema. So we really dive deep in our free calls to make sure that we can understand what that health history is. And the third time is when the family just comes to me and says, Dana, I just want to know what's going on in my kid's underlying body and I want to target that specifically. I won't say no. Now, 50% of the kids that I work with, we make dietary changes and we literally don't need to go further. Their symptoms reduce so dramatically that we don't need to go into lab testing, which is amazing. The other 50%, there are underlying factors contributing to their symptoms that we need to target in addition to diet. Now, the way that we structure pricing for the lab testing is we are not aligned with any particular lab. We just choose the gold standard labs for those particular tests, and we send those lab kits out to your house. You take the samples at home and you pay those lab charges directly to the lab itself. We don't make a markup at all. And then we charge our fees relating to our package separately. Now, if you want to know more about that, simply schedule a free call with our team and we can go into detail about what we think would be the next best step for your family and for your journey. We can go into all of the particulars surrounding that. There are 4 foundation functional lab tests that we recommend and we use with our families, and I'm going to talk about each one in detail now. So the first one we encourage families to do is a GI Map Stool Test. It's from a lab called Diagnostic Solutions Lab, and it basically looks at the state of the gut. So it looks for things like parasites, bacteria, worms, yeast overgrowth. I know it doesn't sound really exciting and nice, but we also look for intestinal health markers that look at inflammation, immune system responses, leaky gut, reactivity to gluten, digestive enzymes, and are you digesting your fat well? So firstly, I just want to give you a brief overview of a few things relating to the gut and how it is so connected to how our kids function, especially those with ADHD and all the associated disorders. So firstly, I just want to touch on the gut-brain connection. Now, there is a very close connection between the gut and the brain, and one of the first signs of disconnect in the brain is a gut that's not functioning well. Now, the brain has many areas involved in gut function, but one of the main areas is the frontal lobe, and it talks to the gut via nerve branches and two-way chemical messengers. Now, the frontal lobe is involved in things like attention and focus, executive function, planning, organizing, problem solving, all of which are common symptoms that most of our kids with ADHD suffer with. So ensuring the gut-brain connection is able to function well is paramount to ensuring the frontal lobe is able to function well as well. The biggest kicker for me is the gut is responsible for making 95% of our serotonin, 50% of our dopamine, and these are our happy, feel-good neurotransmitters or hormones in our body that help regulate our emotions. They maintain our mood balance and our cognitive function. And again, as most of us know, these are areas that most of our kids with ADHD have problems with. Now, if you're not aware, common prescription medication from doctors use, say, for anxiety, for example, basically aim to allow the body to use the serotonin that it has more effectively. However, we believe that Why don't we just find out why the body isn't producing the right amount of serotonin, fix that, then the body can produce what it needs on its own to function well. So this is a stool test. We send the kit to your house. You take the stool sample and you send it back to the lab, and that test costs $359 paid directly to the lab. That doesn't include our fees, and we can talk about that in a free call if you want to investigate this further. But I just want you to ponder on this. Have a think about how healing the gut can be so impactful to your child's journey. I know it was so impactful to my son's journey, Oliver. His gut was a mess, and we really worked on honing that in, healing that leaky gut so he could function well and do better and feel good without medication. Second test we are going to go over is from a lab called Vibrant Wellness. And they do these things called Zoomer tests. Now, I have to spell it because as an Australian living in the US, I say Zoomer. But you guys would say Zoomer, which is Z-O-O-M-E-R. And even if I try to pronounce it, it doesn't come out right. So they do these Zoomer tests and food sensitivity tests. So firstly, before I go into what that test looks at, I want to link gut function to this test. So basically, when we eat food, our gut breaks down that food into micronutrient-sized particles, and those particles go through the lining of the gut into our cells to give us the nutrients we need so we can function optimally. However, a lot of our kids have something called leaky gut. Now, some of you might have heard of it, some of you might have not, but what it is, it's basically the breakdown of the lining in the gut, and it forms these large holes in the lining. Now, when we eat food, even the healthiest food, before the gut has had a chance to break it down, it can go through the holes in the gut into our bloodstream. Now, the way the body's designed is that when something foreign goes into our bloodstream, it recognizes it as a foreign object. Just like if you get sick, a virus goes into your bloodstream, your body recognizes it as a foreign object and it turns on an immune response. Now, if you think about this, if that large molecule is in fact a really healthy large food macronutrient or protein, then your immune system might start sending signals to create an immune response and start creating antibodies and start attacking it. Now, the body has a really awesome memory. So anytime you eat that again, your immune system, it sees it as dangerous, it attacks it, it causes more inflammation and continues to further break down the lining of the gut. Now, all of this results in food intolerances. And these food intolerances, they continue to wreak havoc on the gut until they're removed. It's like this vicious cycle. Something started leaky gut, whether it was medication, antibiotics, parasite, bacteria. Then leaky gut causes food intolerances, and the food intolerances continue to cause leaky gut. So in order to heal the gut, you must remove these foods or they're going to continue to break down the lining of the gut and you won't be successful. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, oh, I'm going to get a food sensitivity panel and I'm going to take out all of these foods. But they don't look at what's going on in the gut and they don't spend time healing the gut while they take those foods out. So more foods are going to become sensitive and it's this vicious cycle. So you need to do both together. So with that being said, the test that I use looks for inflammatory reactions in the body to certain foods. Now, the important thing to remember is food sensitivities, they aren't true allergies, but they do cause inflammation in the body. So you can actually heal from sensitivities. Once you can heal the gut, you can start to add those foods back in. Now, the test that I use is very different to what you can get online or at most doctors' places. Firstly, traditional doctors won't do these tests, but a lot of naturopaths and other holistic practitioners don't do the one that I'm doing. So the one that they use most normal food sensitivity panels and they test the food at the top protein level. So we're just a standard IgG or IgA food sensitivity panel. But the issue comes as a lot of foods, they have similar protein structures. So food sensitivity panels, they tend to have a lot of false positives and false negatives. So the test that I use tests each food down to the peptide level of the proteins for the most accurate 100% results. So, for example, egg, okay, it's got that top protein level for egg white and egg yolk, but inside the protein, there's something like 20 different peptides that you can be reacting to. Okay, so it might not show up at the top protein level, but there may be reactive underneath, and that's what we're testing. Normally, I suggest we choose 4 food Zoomers based on what foods your child likes and eats the most often. We can choose more if required. So we can choose from things like corn and dairy and eggs, lectins, which is a chemical compound found in foods like tomatoes and beans. We can choose from nuts, peanuts, seafood, grains, or wheat. Now, this lab throws in a free food sensitivity panel, which tests over 100 different foods at the top protein level as well. So other foods like garlic and banana. And I find this a really good catch-all package. You are 100% certain on the foods they eat the most, and then you catch the rest at the top protein level. Now, this is a simple finger prick test done at home. I know some families know that their kids will not do a full blood test, so I love this, that it's a simple finger prick test, and we have lots of tricks up our sleeves to help little kiddos do that prick test at home. It costs $400. It's paid to the lab, and it's really, really good value, because if you bought them all separately, it would cost over $1,000. So there's a very, very good deal of information and a lot of information on this test. And I will say, on the Wheat Zoomer, they also have some amazing leaky gut markers as well, which is why I love it so much. The third test that we use is from a lab called Great Plains. Now, they do this test called the organic acid test, or OATS for short. It's such a great test because it looks at over 70 different important markers in the whole body from top to bottom and how it's functioning. It can show you the need for specific nutrients such as B vitamins, which are really, really important for our compromised kids. Diet modification, so issues with histamines, salicylates, oxalates, for example. It looks at your detoxification pathways, neurotransmitters, so serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. It looks at your mitochondrial function, oxidative stress, yeast, mold toxicity, and other important markers as well. And interestingly, and this is why I love it so much, this test was originally designed by a doctor for kids with autism, and it's now widely used to explore the root cause for so many other concerns. And I recommend this test for children who have these additional needs, as it can really help identify underlying causes that are contributing to things like ADHD, sensory issues, behavior, learning problems. This is a urine test, very simple. We send the kit to your house, you take the urine sample and you send it back to the lab, and it costs $309 paid directly to the lab. And the final test, and it's also such a great test, they're all as equally as good as each other. It's from a lab called DHA, and it's a Kryptopirah test. And I actually did a training inside my free Facebook group on Kryptopirah. And so if you're watching this, you might want to search that inside my free Facebook group to get more information on this. But pylorrhea is categorized by elevated urine Kryptopirah levels. And when you have that, it results in a dramatic deficiency of zinc and vitamin B6. And you might know it as something called pyroluria, pyrrole disorder, or elevated pyrroles, and it is frequently identified in behavioral disorders, ADHD, depression, assaultive, aggressive, and violent behavior. Now, some of the symptoms common to pylorrhea include poor tolerance to physical and emotional stress, poor anger control, emotional mood swings, poor short-term memory, and all of those are common symptoms of those with ADHD, hence why this test is so important. This is also a urine test. We send the kit to your house, you take the urine sample and you send it back to the lab, and it costs $82. So as mentioned, the lab fees for these 4 tests would be $359 for the gut test, $400 for the Vibrant Wellness food test, $309 for the organic acid test, and $82 for the Kryptopirah test, which comes to a total of $1,150. Now, as I mentioned, these are the lab fees that you pay directly to the lab. They don't include our fees, our package, or our program. And so if you are interested in taking a deeper dive for your child, I really suggest that you schedule a free call with me or one of my team members, and we can talk to you about how we can help you fight your child's ADHD symptoms with food and a natural approach. So guys, thanks for tuning in today. I hope this video was helpful. If you've got any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me via email, via PM, or in my free Facebook group. We are more than happy to answer your questions, but feel free to book a call and we can discuss further with you. Take care. Have a good night.